Hello, and thank you for joining another episode of Ketonian Korner. I'm Jolene Hale, and I'm here with my co-host, John Davidson.
Hello, hello.
So, our last podcast, we did an interview with Robert Sykes, the Keto Savage, and his girlfriend, Crystal Love, and that was phenomenal. So anybody who has not listened to that, go do so, because that was a great interview. What else have you had going on, John?
Not a lot, really. Just trying to get things done around the house, you know.
Do you have your outdoor adventure built that you were building for the kids with the rope and?
Yes. All that stuff is completed. I got the salmon ladder completed. I am really bad at that. Not gonna lie. I look like a convulsing frog that's trying to climb up a wall that's too big. It's very embarrassing. And
I may have to sneak off and talk to your wife and have her secretly videotape so that you can post it.
That would be good. Yeah. So anyway, that's definitely happening. I'm getting better, but it's going to take a while. I'm going to need to get my form down better. But it's so cute to watch my kids, do pull-ups or hangs and stuff, because I went ahead and ran the whatever you want to call those, the rungs all the way down, so my son, who's 3, can still reach the pole.
Nice.
We can adjust the poles, of course. They're meant to be. But anyway, it's completing it has definitely been good for me. I tend to store half-done projects as stress in the back of my head. So, which actually kind of leads us a little bit into today.
Yes. So today, we are talking about mindfulness.
Yes. And you tried to quiz me about this, and I would not answer any of your questions because I wanted you to ask all of your questions here.
Yeah,
so if it sounds like you're not prepared, it's because she's been literally completely held in the dark. So I lump a lot underneath quote-unquote mindfulness. Just a kind of reset if you haven't been listening from the beginning. Financing career, that type of stuff, and the stress of money is probably really big, but I don't throw that in this. So although when we talk about quote-unquote stress, I just kind of want you to take financing career and throw it off to the side. We're not going to talk about that today. There's entire podcasts we could do about that. But there's different opinions on what mindfulness is. And for me, just a couple disclaimers or reminders. I'm a type A personality, supercharged, go, take on more than I can handle. Also, I have ADHD tendencies and I'm a little OCD. So all those just do not mix well together. So we talked a little bit about meditation at one point, and there's a whole entire, series on meditation, not underneath Ketonian Korner, but underneath the Small Primal Habits. And we'll link to that in the show notes, but that, I would say, would have been the start of my mindfulness exploration. And when we talk about that, I'm gonna say that I have shifted. So that was, 8, 9, maybe even a year ago that I did that experiment. That would have been, if we break it into the phases of trying to embed a habit in your life, assessment. I decided that I needed it, even if I didn't think I could do it. I started building the habit. Building the habit, you can listen to my struggles. You can hear me and my past boss at the time as we go through each week, what we succeeded, what we failed, what apps we were trying, all that stuff. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on meditation, except for over the last couple of months, I have grown that skill, if you would call the third phase growth, to where now it's pretty much embedded in my life. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And with meditation, I think mindfulness is either in front of that or follows along in the fact of sometimes you do things that aren't necessarily meditation, but they are things that you do to clear your mind. So I would say I tend to call those myself mindfulness moments. But think about any of those. Stop and smell the roses. Take the long way home for a couple extra minutes to drive, the scenic routes, quote unquote, those type of things. And I think all of those lump together. Fitness too. We've talked a lot about fitness, but more along the lines of the NEAT or the walking, the hiking, those type of stuff. That low-level cardio definitely helps me, I guess, be more grounded.
So with that sort of thing, more like I don't want to call it relaxation, but something that you enjoy that kind of de-stresses you, but you're still getting physical activity. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, it's a fantastic question. So yes, I think if I looked at people in my life, my mother is gardening. She could probably write a book on that. I do some of that too. Here at work, we've got a hydro garden, and just taking 2 minutes on my walk back to my desk to stop and look at the green stuff and make sure the water and stuff's not dry. Experimenting with microgreens right now. That really isn't quote unquote meditation, but it could be your meditation. I mean, there's surfers, and I'm sure that it would say their meditation is surfing. I think anything like that. Runners, that runner high where they just got to run to clear their mind. I think it's a good example of that also. For you, maybe relaxing in your pool.
Yeah.
You think
I was just thinking.
You're just thinking that? Relaxing in the pool?
Or anything in the pool, really. Even cleaning the pool, for me, which drives my husband crazy. And he cannot understand how that, for me, is relaxing. Because the house cleaning stresses me out. But going out to the pool and vacuuming it every day does not bother me a bit.
So let's, to relate that, I have seen that in my life too. Cutting the grass. For me, it's instant gratification. The grass was long, I drove over it, now it's short and looks nice. It's like, oh yay, I did something. Whereas, at the office, you can just have meeting after meeting where you're in the daily grind trying to get initiative off the ground, and some days you just like, I am further behind than I was when I got here. So that instant gratification of cutting the grass starts to be really appealing, or cleaning the pool. That said, I don't cut my own grass anymore. I hired that out.
I do my own pool every day. I get in it as soon as I get off of work. In the summertime, that is my priority. As soon as I get off work, I get home, put my suit on, and go straight outside. Everything else can wait.
So there you go. That is your meditation. So because we're making this about my habits, I'm going to do a little bit more of a deep dive in particular about those things as it relates to me. So you can follow along in our Mindfulness Journey podcast about meditation if you wanted to hear how I kind of grew for that, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. But when it comes to my current habit, I don't think I've ever plugged my website, but I do have a website. It's literally johnodavidson.com, and that's just like a landing page, so there's really not too much there. But one thing I do is, yes, I'm so immature. When I said do, I actually chuckled to myself in my head. I hope all you listeners did also. I have one that's called basically my current goals, and I talk a little bit about my fitness, my nutrition, and my mindfulness. So underneath mindfulness, I've got a few things that I try to do. If you walk through the meditation piece, I've done the meditate every day. I've done all the apps. I've done that type of stuff, and I found for me my sweet spot is somewhere between 2 and 10 minutes, and it depends on level of stress. Let's call it that. Now, with that, I would also lump in the sensory deprivation. So I've done a float tank interview, and if you're not familiar with a sensory deprivation tank, it's like forced meditation to me, and it may be different to you. My wife hates it. She just cannot do it. I've dragged her there before, and it just so your results may vary, but for me, it's 30 minutes, and you're in basically a supercharged magnesium bath. So you float on the top of the water, and you can set it. You can listen to an iPod for the whole hour. You can kind of control that. But for me, I do 10 minutes of meditation music and then nothing. And then before, I don't know, right? So for you guys who can't see body language, I'm getting those strange looks right now. And I sounds crazy. And a year ago, I would have said I wouldn't be able to do that either. But 10 minutes, I allow myself, I'm going to tell you my process, or my habit. I just think about my body and the fact that I tend to roll my shoulders forward because I live in this, they call it text neck now, but really it's because I use my laptop. And it's been much better since I have my standing workstation to where I don't. But even just like bending, it's like hard for me. It takes me quite a while just to relax and get my neck to be level with my body, because I tend to want to lean forward. It's just like my body is just a natural habit. So it makes me realize how much, when you have everything else, no light, no anything else, you can really listen to, quote unquote, listen to your body better. So that's me. 30 minutes, sorry, I can't do math. So then it would be 40 minutes of complete nothingness, and then 10 minutes before it's over, they turn the meditation music back on. So I literally tried to meditate for 30 minutes, which is painful. And for anyone who's tried meditation before, if I was listening to this interview a year ago, I would have said there's no way in the world I could ever do that. But if you listen through the entire journey of my meditation, you'll start to understand that for me, your mind wandering and you pulling it back in, whether it's to your breath or a body scan or whatever meditation you're attempting, that is the same thing in my head as a rep at the gym. The more that happens, the more I'm quote unquote exercising my mind and getting it to a state where I can have it a little more, not cleared, but a little less monkey mind. So I was really bad at meditation and really bad at float tanks until I embedded it or made it a habit in my life. So the float tank costs money, and it's significant. I mean, it's not cheap, but luckily it's in my town. So once a month I just have it scheduled and I just buy packages, and it's a little pricey, but I'm worth it. You're laughing, Mike. But
because for those of you who can't see body language, that was hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. So picture me in my sassy position. Now, all of that is going to sound crazy to you, but just remember, you go through steps. You try new things. You figure out what it means to you. And for me, when I get home and I park my car, taking 30 seconds even to stare at my steering wheel, for lack of a better way of saying it, and just take a deep breath and like try to leave work at work, has made a big difference in my life. That mindfulness moment of just pausing, and then when I go in, I tell myself, you are going to be super excited about whatever the kids are doing. And it's always, Legos or whatever it is. But whatever it is, I mean, it's like the most important thing to them when you come home. So I try to make that short moment there, at least the first minute or two, try to ignore all the everything at the house and just listen to the kids and, step down to their level and talk to each one of them. So those have made a big difference in my mind. And Does that make sense? I mean, I kind of tried to shelter you from any of this content because I wanted to hear your feedback because, the dog runs over and I do feel like the dog is always happy to see me, is, believe it or not, like telling yourself in the mirror, you're good enough, you're strong enough, and gosh darn it, people like you. So it's always nice to have the dog is just as excited as the kids. Because the dog will still be excited when the kids are teenagers.
That's true.
And don't listen to me anymore.
Yeah, no, it does totally make sense. And actually, it's pretty impressive that as a guy, because I think all of us get caught up in our everyday grind, right? But sometimes for a guy, it's harder to kind of step back and do that. So that's actually very impressive that you do that. Well, specifically doing that as a conscious thing for your kids.
So this is going to make me sound like a complete dork, but sometimes I think about things from what does it cost me? It costs me literally nothing to dedicate the first 2 minutes when I walk in the door. And I probably picked it up in some book or those type of things to where I got the idea from somewhere. I don't know where, but it is strangely made a bigger impact than I thought from the time investment. Same with meditation. I really thought meditation would be something that would be quote unquote wasting my time. I really felt that way for a long time. And it took study after study and interview after interview of hearing people talk about it before I ever gave it a chance. And even then, I knew I'd fail, so I went to my boss mentioned something about it, how she thought she should do it. And there's no better accountability partner than having to follow up with your own boss on whether or not you did something. It definitely helps. And it kind of took that for me to realize. And I don't invest as much time in quote-unquote meditation, but then again, I do the float tank, which is a big thing.
Now, is that something that you started in the beginning, is the float tank, or did you do things to kind of gradually work up to the float tank?
That's a great question, because the float tank, I probably would feel much like my wife. And we can link to the float stuff. You'll hear me interview the guy who owns the float, and then the other interview is me interviewing my wife about how much she hates it. Because I like to show both sides. So.
Yeah, as you're talking about it, that's what I'm thinking.
Right now,
I don't think I could do that, especially calculating your time. This is 60 minutes laying in there. I can't lay in a tanning bed for 20 minutes without, 10 minutes into it, I'm about to go nuts.
So 2 years ago, I couldn't do 8 minutes in a tanning bed. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Nor could I really meditate for 10 minutes, even probably.
Okay, so this was a gradual.
And if you're listening to any piece of this and you have anxiety about it, then don't even think about that. Push it off, because your life is a journey, and you may never. But I am pretty. It would take a lot for me to be convinced that meditation isn't positive. There are so many studies and brain scans and all that stuff. I mean, if you Google benefits of meditation, it's pretty amazing the amount of literature that's out there.
Yeah, and I do. That's why I'm asking, because you are, I feel like you are much more active than I am, mentally and physically. And I can't wrap my mind around laying there for 60 minutes. That's why I was wondering if it was a gradual build-up, because...
It was definitely gradual.
I do some meditation. If I've had a lot of stress at work or a super busy day, I'll just go sit in a room by myself. And so, I'm familiar with that, but that's why I'm asking.
Oh, yeah. And, it's hard to explain. I still second guess myself on if meditation is a good investment for me. But I'm kind of lucky that I stack things on top of each other. So let's take, for example, the float tank. And right now, you look at it and all you can think about is that 30 minutes of time investment and what I could be doing with that. Did I say 30? I meant 60. That 60-minute time investment, what I could be doing with that 60 minutes if I wasn't doing that.
Right.
Well, the fact that you are floating in a bath of Epsom salt, and it's got magnesium, and you just Google it of what's inside of a float tank. It's like taking sports recovery. It ducktails on top of all the recovery stuff of the football players that are doing those Epsom salt baths and all that stuff, and you absorb a ton of nutrients. What I meant to say is minerals through your skin, and when you're laying in literally a bath of that stuff, I mean, there are, locally we've got ice hockey, and I'll see ice hockey guys in there all the time.
Nice.
And I don't think they're going for the meditation, right? I'm pretty sure they're probably not turning all the lights off and turning the music off. But you got to start somewhere. And even when I said I wanted to do float tanks and I wanted to build that in, I was failing at it regularly until I told myself, when I go, I'm going to schedule the next one. So now I try to do floating somewhere in the second week. Usually week 2, Friday is my goal, and then I flex based on my schedule. It's way easier to have it on the calendar and have to move it than it is to right now. Here's a great example. I'll throw myself under the bus. My last float, I did not set up my next because I know I'm traveling to KetoCon and I'm traveling to Canada, and I wasn't sure how I was going to fit it in. And you know what? I still haven't scheduled it yet. And I've got to either do it right when we get back I've got like a day or two in between the two trips. And I know if I don't do it before I leave to Canada, I will not do it. Now, the other side of that is today happens to be my deep tissue massage day. Okay.
We are learning a lot
about John
today.
So, monthly I also do a massage. I'll eat some crow and say, I even talked negatively about massages in the past and how it was a complete waste of money and blah, blah, blah. That said, I now have somebody who comes to the house, and we have a table at our house. And we haven't gotten to minimalism yet, but we will, and ask me about the cost of the table and, justifying that. And I'd love to talk about it because it has made a crazy different impact into my life. Much with the fitness, actually, I kind of relate this to sushi. I went through my first 30 years of my life thinking sushi was disgusting because I only had bad sushi. I didn't know they made good sushi. And then I was on a family trip to Florida, and my cousin, who's probably as type A as me, said, no, you're having sushi with us. And she made me go, and I was all like, whining to myself about how woe is me. And I know what you're thinking right now. Sushi's got to have rice and all that stuff, and that's not true. If you look at sashimi, I mean, they'll bring you rice, and they even put rice on your plate if you don't ask them to avoid it, but you literally are eating raw fish. And I had total mind block about that. There's no way that could be good. And turns out, man, when I was in Indonesia, we went to this fancy restaurant that had sashimi, and I literally could have eaten just plates of raw fish by itself. And again, crazy. So what's that have to do with to massages? Absolutely nothing. Except for, I feel the same way about sushi as I do about massages. I spent the first 30 years of my life thinking they were completely stupid and whatnot. And then I had a Grafton, which is a souped up, basically where they scrape your skin to do muscle release. And please Google that. Don't go off that. With a chiropractor, and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's something to this deep tissue massage stuff and this fascia, is that the word? Fascia? Mm-hmm. And so I found, finally, my wife, I'll give her credit here, Shani definitely was come on, every once in a while, let's do a couple massages. And I was like, and I'd go and like quote unquote entertain her. In my head, I thought I'd be saying, oh, I'll do this for you, but it does nothing for me. And then out of nowhere, I had one that was like fantastic. And I was like, oh my goodness, that almost hurt. But like afterwards, I was like, oh God. And now it's like part of my life. If I didn't do it, in Thailand, Thai massages, I was like, oh my goodness, there's something here. So anyway, I now put, that built into my calendar. So first Wednesday of every month, I've got the girl comes to the house and she's fantastic. We alternate watching the kids and having it done.
You definitely have the relaxation part of this mindfulness down.
Well, that's why we're talking about this, because all you hear is how we're limiting carbs and we're doing all these things. And, one of the things about being Primal Blueprints, which is, where my roots were before I ever really realized I slipped into nutritional ketosis, was a holistic approach to all the other stuff. And we talk about that all the time. But if you don't hear me talk about it, you may think that, you don't realize that I do some of these woo-woo things that I may have said were woo-woo, right? So I don't know what to say except for building those things into my life has made me prioritize some of the things about me and maybe my relationship with my wife that they're on the calendar so they get done. And until I went that far, I don't think I had really made them habits in my life. I'd give lip service to how I think it was great, right? So, that's the, person that, is, maybe, still doing something that they don't think is good. Which maybe you could say that's me for alcohol right now. I still drink alcohol sometimes, and I every time I do it, the next day I say I'm never doing that again, and then I do it again. So there you go. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about minimalism mindset. If you think about the mindfulness, I don't think you can talk about mindfulness without looking at the things that are in your life that add stress and or work. If you think about the total cost of ownership of something, some stuff, you talked about your pool. You had the cost of buying the pool, you got the cost of the chemicals to keep it going, and you've got the daily habit or whatever of cleaning the pool, those type of things. But if you took that as a calculation and you looked at it from, well, what is the quote-unquote satisfaction I get from that object, you would say it is well worth the investment.
Absolutely.
So cleaning your pool, you consider that work?
No.
Doing opening the pool. Do you dread opening the pool? No.
I dread closing the pool.
You might, okay. You dread closing the pool because now that's, you're drifting away. So when I was 18, I bought a jet ski. Loved it. I don't know what I paid for it, but we lived on the lake at the time. I just loved every minute of it. Got a job at Caterpillar, right? Come here, all of a sudden, I shifted from having a lake where there was a lot of access, a lot of value generated from that activity, to my only option without taking it a long distance was driving it up and down the river. I probably lived in denial for a long time that no longer, if you think about a scale and you have the work it takes to own that particular thing in your life and the value you're getting from it, that scale tipped, and I probably didn't realize it, right? I dreaded winterizing it. I dreaded a lot of those things, right? It's tough though when you're in the daily grind to realize those things. Mm-hmm. So at some point in my life, it's probably been 5 years, I started looking at things differently, and it probably was revolving around some risky job stuff, to where I looked at maybe a little bit more from the cost perspective. It's when I got rid of the jet ski. I had expensive or new, pretty new cars, a house I probably couldn't afford, those type of things. And I know we're drifting a little bit over into the budget side and career, blah, blah, but pulling us back to minimalism, nobody would come to my house and say, oh, well, you're obviously a minimalist. You have 7 things and they're all on open shelves, and your kitchen's small, and you live in a 100 square foot mini house. You would never accuse me of being a minimalist. But I think there are rules, I call them rules because I instituted them on myself, that have made a huge difference in my life. And there's a couple podcasts we can link to that were me discovering minimalism. So it's me and another person at work talking about minimalist, and she talks a little bit about the wardrobe piece, which I don't know if you've realized this. Do you know that I follow that?
I did not.
You do not. So I have I took every shirt I had to iron and gave it away. I bought...
Yeah, I did that years ago.
Okay.
That was not because I was a minimalist, it's because I was lazy.
Okay. I went to a company thing where we had a discount on clothing, and I bought 5 work-branded shirts, and I found a pair of slacks that I liked, and went to Kohl's and bought 5 of them that were exactly the same. And I had literally the super small, and I put a zip tie in my closet, and everything that I wore I washed, and when I washed it I put it on one side of the zip tie. So at the end of the year I knew what I wore and what I didn't wear. And just doing that made me realize, holy moly, I have all these things that I don't ever wear. And sweatshirts, done with sweatshirts, never going to wear one again. Those type of things. And I'm at the point now where I am that way I'm about to take that step with t-shirts. I've got all those t-shirts from, last year's KetoCon, and I already threw one of those away. Now I'm going to throw the other one away. Those type, my Primal Blueprint shirt, some type of those things.
Donate.
Yeah. For the most part, I donate, but I do throw away t-shirts that are specific to...
Yeah, somebody can wear them. Donate.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'll take that as constructive criticism. So back to the rules. Just in case, here's a great example. Open up the box, install the closet organizer, which is something that's been on my list to do for since I moved into my house that I'm in now. I got all those extra pieces, right? I got 2 extra shelves, and I got 2 support beams that I'm not using, but literally, if I wanted to install a new closet organizer, I would still have to buy a whole other kit, because they're just these assorted pieces that are valuable, but they're not I would literally be keeping them just in case I needed them later. Whenever I say just in case, I get rid of it. Habitat for Humanity takes anything having to do with rental property stuff. If I use half of a roll of underlinement at one of my rental properties, that roll I will never use again. And if I happen to install another floor that needs that, well, then I'll be buying another roll, and I'm okay with that. and I know that sounds like sometimes a waste of money, but the fact that I did not have to store it, I did not have to think about it. I was able to get rid of it right away. Sometimes I was in the habit of driving around with rental property stuff in my truck for a month because I didn't do something with it. Those type of things, all gone away. And yes, I probably waste a little money sometimes, but it's okay because the satisfaction it gives me to not have to deal with it anymore is well worth it. I was listening to a podcast, and I think it was on one of the guys on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he said that he quit locking his bike up. And he did this, this sounds like me being a dork, this calculation of, well, it takes me 2 minutes to lock my bike up. My bike is worth this if I bought another one that was used, but me just freely just setting my bike wherever I want, whenever I want, and going into a place and then getting out and not having to worry about it, it was just like freeing. And now, granted, I probably have never gone that far to leave, like my keys in my car, and the windows down. But I mean, somewhere in the middle you find out that the mental clutter of trying to maintain that you can get rid of. So it's a value thing for me.
If it's unused in a year?
Oh no. My rule of thumb is if I tell myself I'm going to keep this just in case I need it again, I don't keep it.
So as you were starting, though, I mean that sounds like a maintenance mentality.
Oh, good
right?
question. Yeah.
So as you're starting, though, so let's take me and.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know if I really want to admit this, but so my husband and I have lived in this house for 3 years. We lived in our prior house for 5 years. The prior house was under construction the entire 5 years, so almost nothing was ever unpacked in our house that we left.
Yeah.
So when it came to this house, it's still packed. So I have things that have been in boxes for 8 years.
Yes.
So
don't open them.
Clearly, I probably don't need. Now, I do have to open them because there are some things, our wedding pictures, things like that are still packed up that we do want, right? So for somebody, and hopefully nobody is that extreme as I am, but for somebody who has a house full of stuff, what's the good rule of thumb as you're going through something? Do you make piles? Do you?
So this leads me into my next rule. My rule of thumb is 90 days.
90 days, okay.
Now that excludes seasonal items. I mean, like obviously my Christmas tree we're only going to use once a year. I have children. It's in my best interest to have a Christmas tree because it adds value to our lives. However, for me, I am more of a 90-day, which would be the same thing as saying if I use it this quarter.
Okay.
Now, granted, there's some exclusions to that mentally, and the fact of you may not be 90 days. For you, it may be a year. But for me, I have found my sweet spot to be somewhere around the 90-day mark. So let's talk back about my rental property. If I have a tool that I haven't used in 90 days, then I should just go rent it. That's my mental thing, because it takes, for tools, you got to maintain them. You got to sharpen the blades, for lack of a better term, those type of things, right? So, saws, use them all the time. Sawzall, drills, those type of things. Organize them, laid out my workbench to have the things where I wanted them. But I have a bin that says electrical, and I dump electrical stuff in there. My rule of thumb is that bin can't overflow. So if that bin gets big, then I'm looking through it to find out what haven't I not used in the last whatever. So it's not really a 90-day per se rule to me. The bin, and I don't want to grow outside of that particular bin for electrical stuff, because it's easy to keep electrical things. You've got
made a space.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
You can't occupy more than that space.
Yeah. So those are just some kind of rules of thumb, and you're not. I mean, just start with a year, and then go. I mean, if you obviously, you were talking about wedding pictures. I can't remember the last time I ever pulled out the wedding album, but I scanned a lot of the wedding pictures in. Actually, what am I saying? Scanned in. I scanned in my high school yearbook and stuff. I literally took my phone. I took pictures of the pages that meant something to me, like where people had signed something rather, because I hadn't looked at that thing in a long time. And I took a dorky picture of myself and a dorky picture of me in the chess club or whatever. Technically, it was the computer club, not the chess club, but and I threw my yearbook away. And I do not regret that.
Well, and
I had 4 yearbooks from high school, which is important to me in college, maybe, probably not even in college. It's important to me at the time.
Yeah.
But I have not opened them in wherever.
Ours is actually not even, I mean, I didn't even go that far, so, and again, this is bad. I'm going to be revealing things about myself, but, so we had a CD of our pictures. We looked so horrible when we got married that I was embarrassed by it, so I never downloaded them, never printed any pictures off, none of that. And I tossed them into the computer room, and then when we moved, everything got packed.
So they're
in a box somewhere. I have no idea what box. But now that I don't look like that, and I'm, like, not that I'm not still embarrassed by what we did look like, I can now look at them with a different outlook. So I want those.
Well, we are going to run out of things. I mean, we always bump up against time, and but for that, I think we could do literally an entire episode on digital, because it's so much better now than it used to be. I mean, I had things on floppy disks. I don't even have a way of getting them off the floppy disks. I had to order something from Amazon, a USB floppy disk that I could plug into my computer, and then I got all those things off and put them in the cloud, and it's amazing. I can search, show me pictures of, John, me.
Well, I did just buy a scanner, so I haven't hooked it up yet. It came in 2 days ago, and it will be in my office, and so everything is going to start getting scanned so that I no longer have all of those pieces laying around. So, although I haven't actually taken the initiative to get that done yet, I did.
Well, I mean,
just so I'm.
I had a scanner. I've had scanners for 10 years, and we have an all-in-one scanner, fax, copy, blah 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 at our house. Don't use it because cell phones are so powerful now. Everything goes straight into Google for me. I've completely Googleized my life. So I guess you only get 2 of the 5 of my minimalist rules.
Well, why don't we go through what the other... So we've got meditation, minimalism. What are the...
So underneath minimalism / essentialism, my 5 rules are the just in case. If I'm keeping it just in case, don't keep it. My 90 rule, which is if I haven't used it in 90 days, then it's on probation. If I don't use it in the next 90 days, it's out. I would say if it's not a heck yes, then it's a no. And that's something I struggle with all the time. I'm an idea guy. I love to do things. But if it's not, I'm willing to do it right now, stop what I'm doing, prioritize it to do it right now, then it's on a sometime maybe list, which is a getting things done methodology. Sometime maybe is like, the methodology of saying, I'll think about it some other time. But the fact that I wrote it on a list to think about some other time somehow clears the psyche for me. And maybe that's an ADHD thing. I don't really know. The other thing is 2-minute rule. If it would take me 2 minutes to clean it up or to take care of it, I try to do it. And that's so easy to say. But
I know, what if it takes longer than 2 minutes?
Well, then you gotta think about whether or not you can do it right now.
Okay.
But I mean, all the kids are in the car, and my wife's honking at me, and it's going to take me 2 minutes to put something away into the right place. I do it as opposed to letting it sit around, because what happens is all those little things sit around, and then pretty soon my island looks like misfit tools.
Okay. So that's organization and clutter.
And then batching. I know it doesn't sound like a minimalism kind of thing, but just putting like things together so they get done at the same time has made huge. I don't have to worry about that till I get to work. Off my mental psyche and onto my work list. And that's also a getting things done methodology. And the just in case rule and the 90-90 or kind of rules I picked up from listening to books from the minimalists, and the prioritization heck yes or no is from the book Anything You Want. So those are all tips. So completely ran over time, so we could do a deep dive on those, but I mean, I have already kind of done that. So the end of last year, so that would have been 4 months ago, I did a refresher on my 4 rules and how they've changed, because those 4 rules are different now than they were a year ago. So, all right. So another episode all about me.
Yeah. Well, I am going to start that. I am again revealing something about me. I'm a geek. I have put a project plan together for all of these things that my husband and I want to get done. We're looking at possibly moving, and so there's a lot of things that I need to accomplish before we can do that. So
just vacuum the car.
Yeah, this is definitely one that is at the top of the list to get done, and this will give me a great start to be able to get that accomplished quickly.
As the saying goes, if it looks like an elephant in your mind's going to keep thinking it's an elephant. And I know you're calling yourself a dork for doing a project plan, but even just bullet pointing the 7 steps that you're going to take to get there makes that not look like an elephant anymore. It looks like, that.
Well, and that's really why I did it, because looking at the house as a whole, that was overwhelming, which is why I haven't started it.
Is it really just a house clutter thing?
Well, we have a lot of things that I just want to get rid of.
Because there's a book that's tactical about cleaning your house, and it has you go through each room and stuff. It is super woo-woo, but very beneficial. I can't remember what it is. Like the art of, I don't know. I'm not going to guess, but I'll show it to you, because I've listened to it 3 times because it's kind of helps me think through some stuff. And my folding, I totally pulled out of that.
Okay.
You know how normally and when you have dressers, you put your clothes in one on top of another.
Mm-hmm.
Switched it to diagonal and goes across the sides so you see everything. Oh my, life changing.
Okay. Except for after the show, we're having that conversation, because
except for my underwear, I still stack my underwear.
Yeah, I have OCD in my closet and my dresser drawer, so we're gonna have that conversation.
Oh no, we should save it for another show and have it just air it out. It is laundry after all. Don't you air out dirty laundry?
Yeah, right.
Literally. You could literally have a show on airing out our dirty laundry. Okay, we're literally also this kind of and literally just owned my vocabulary today.
And quotes.
Quotes.
Yeah.
Quotes. Yeah. All right,
guys. Thank you so much for joining another episode, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Sounds great.
Great. Thank you.